the bankers will be with the audience, and the guy called.
I don't know if we lost him.
We lost him there.
We may have. There's another
We
hand
lost him.
that's up. We lost him. Fumi Ajayi Tomori, her hand was up, or his hand, I'm not sure.
Her hand.
Hand,
My
okay.
sister, can you unmute yourself?
She's unmuted.
Let's hear your comment, please.
He's unmuted.
We can't hear you.
Okay.
We can't hear you. It's not clear. We can't hear you.
So we have another hand up. Maybe we can take Monsu Bolaji.
There was Comrade Zaka that Pastor has spoken about earlier.
Yeah. All right. Good evening.
Okay, Monsu, go ahead. Then after that, we'll have Comrade Zaka, please.
Yeah. Good evening. Thank you for bringing us to this session. So it's really appreciating.
Good evening, Monsu.
This my question goes thus now. Nigeria is heading towards a digitalized economy, and while trying to redesign our Naira, it came out yesterday from channels news that some bandits yesterday, they abducted some masses, and they demanded for the new Naira. And the level of literacy in Nigeria, we need to be factual with ourselves. We're heading to digital economy. What's the level of literacy? The level of people, having access to the bank, all these market women and other things. How do you cater for them? Because I'm just seeing what's it called, hyperinflation looming already now. Because if you now this is a kind of a contractive measure, to pack the money, and for it to control inflation. But it shouldn't be funny that this policy now, as it's ongoing, by the time we have census, we have election incoming, and so many other things, 2023. So the little liquidity in the economy that has been printed. So the accessibility of this fund or this money to the people, how will it spread to the people, that are illiterate? I'm very sorry for using that word, that are not too formal like that. We have them in many of the villages and so on and so forth. How will it get to them fast? January 31st, is it not too closer? And the implication of this policy. So towards the event of the Yuletide is, almost nearby. We have the census and we have the general election. So I think I want it to be part of a discussion. So what's the way out? Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. What's the way out of this situation? Let's hear Comrade Zaka, please.
Yeah,
Comrade.
thank you for giving me this opportunity. Before I continue, I just want to ask, am I audible enough?
I think so.
Okay, thank you very much. Honestly, I've been following these discussions, and I have to be very frank here and quote me that I said so. When I hear that donor agencies want to withdraw their support and donations to NGOs in Nigeria, I get surprised. As far as I'm concerned, Nigeria does not even deserve any donation. Nigeria is supposed to be supporting other countries. Nigeria is supposed to be the continental hub for Africa. And please, I just want to suggest, if possible, people like Pastor and the organizers of this program should organize a special program for us to discuss this subsidy. Many people don't understand what the concept of subsidy is. As I speak to you now, we're talking about a country of 200 million citizens relying on less than 10,000 megawatts of electricity. And we think that people will not look for other ways of generating energy or power to drive activities. You know, it is very surprising. When you talk about this concept of subsidy, first of all, to me, subsidy is an economic pain cushioning concept. And to that extent, that does not mean if subsidy is not working in Nigeria, that must never invalidate the concept of subsidy. But in the context of Nigeria, the whole thing is being read in a very wrong manner. Okay, look at it practically. You don't have electricity. You cannot generate energy. So the strategic sectors cannot be driven. People are now heading towards fossil fuel. And when you talk about fossil fuel, you're either talking about gas or you're talking about petrol or diesel or whatever. We said we want to remove subsidy. And I'm happy this government decided to remove it in phases. As I speak to you now, I don't know how many of you are on generators and how many of you are using diesel generators. We started with diesel. We said we were going to remove subsidy. Then diesel was 80 naira. Today, diesel is it's about 800 naira per liter. I'm just begging anybody to ask this government or anybody to show me how much we have gained. One thing we have gained by removing subsidy on the price of diesel. If you show me, I will be very happy. But as far as I'm concerned, strategic industrial sectors, strategic commercial sectors, and strategic domestic sectors have collapsed. I'm waiting for anybody to show me how much Nigeria has gained by removing subsidy in the price of aviation fuel. As far as I'm concerned, all we have experienced, all we are experiencing are flight cancellations, flight delays, and massacre. I'm waiting for anybody to show me what Nigeria has gained by removing subsidy on the price of kerosene. As far as I'm concerned, all I have seen is that inflation has eroded the disposable income of Nigerians. The only product that is remaining now is only petrol or PMS. And everybody is saying, if we don't remove on that petrol, then Nigeria will collapse. But nobody is talking about the three other products whose subsidy we have removed, and we are not seeing anything. As far as I am also concerned, every time we talk about the concept of Nigeria, we need to be honest to ourselves. As we speak today, all the countries that are endowed with crude oil and gas are doing well. In the context of Nigeria, we are not doing well. We just said recently we discovered about 1 billion barrels at Kolmani in the Gongola Basin. Quote me that I said that will not change the business climate hostilities that investors are experiencing. As I speak to you right now, quote me that I said in the whole of Nigeria, the active drilling rigs, the rigs that are drilling for oil are less than 15. And the only reason why you are experiencing that is because of business climate hostilities. So if you cannot drill, how can you produce to meet up with OPEC quota? And if you cannot drill, how can you even be able to meet up with your internal production to take care of budget deficit? And nobody is talking about refining. We seem to be shying away, but we can give guarantee that election must hold next year and it will hold. What about refining? I had an argument recently with international finance organizations. Let me tell you what I told the man, and the man shut up. The man said, even if we refine internally, especially from petrol alone, he said, even if we refine internally, the highest we can save will be like probably 10 naira per liter. on the price of petrol. Then I said, oh, so there will even be savings. Okay, the assumption is that we import about 70 million liters of PMS per day. If we will be saving only 10 naira by refining internally, multiply 10 naira by 70 million liters per day, that is 70 million Nigerian naira. Multiply that by savings in a week, multiply that by savings in a month and in a year. But I can assure you that if we refine internally, we will save more than 100 naira. Quote me that I say so. So I mean, as far as I'm concerned, Nigeria is honestly on the wrong trajectory when we talk about the economy. Look at all the GDP variables and convince me on anyone that is doing well. From natural gas alone, we will get urea. We'll get ammonia. From ammonia, you will get urea. From urea, you will get fertilizer. That alone will boost agriculture. As I speak to you, fertilizer that used to cost 2,000 naira a bag is about 20,000 naira. I'm from Kaduna. There are 1,001 examples that we can give. We cannot use our natural gas to drive gas turbines and generate electricity. All the good things happening in Qatar now, with what we are saying, World Cup, Qatar is looking well lit. The only thing they are relying on is natural gas. Meanwhile, Nigeria is more of a gas nation than crude oil nation. I don't want to take people's time, but I will appreciate it if I will be specially contacted on similar discussions. We need visionary leaders, and those visionary leaders must be supported by real technocrats and not people who are praise singers. Something is wrong. There is leadership docility in this country, and we need to create the necessary inertia and build a momentum that will make Nigeria move forward. Thank you very much.
Well, Mr. Zwaka, before you leave now, you have 16 candidates to choose from for Nigeria. So which one of them do you think can drive towards delivering this thing that leadership inertia you're talking about? Which one of them do you think can give the right?
Thank you for giving me extra time. What I keep telling people is every country that is a sovereign. Okay, no, when it comes to the candidates, I want to ask them basic and practical questions on energy security, because the first thing is energy, security. Once you get security right, the next thing is energy. And the question is this: from fossil fuel, you will get energy. What is your practical plan? Refinery, quote me that I said, is basic and elementary chemistry. People are not talking about refinery. If you cannot refine internally, you cannot transform anything. I will ask direct questions. You won't just tell me that, okay, we will diversify. How? With all the monies and the riches in Norway, Saudi Arabia, they only have one product, crude oil. Nigeria has 1,001 products. So my own is, I'm ready to, it's like sometimes our energy journalists don't ask these guys the question. If you put them on hotspot, I'm telling you, you will discover the truth. But I'm not saying that a president must be an accountant, must be an oil and gas engineer, must be a medical doctor. No, but have the vision and surround yourself with supporting lieutenants. That's what we are saying. Leaders across the world just have vision, but they surround themselves with the right lieutenants. If they answer, none of them has answered my question. Okay, recently, some people are saying Nigeria is more of a consumption nation. We want to take it to a production nation. Somebody said the reason why we want to remove subsidy on PMS is because that PMS, we are subsidizing consumption. And I told that person, and he shut up. I said, that PMS that you think is a consumption to you, to another person is a catalyst to get to the next point. A barber does not drink that fuel. So it's not a consumption to him, but he needs it as a catalyst because there is no electricity. When you go to, even some of us now, we are using the petrol in our cars, or especially at home, because these days people work at home. You cannot afford diesel. So when you are using petrol and somebody is saying the petrol you are using for this internet and this discussion, that they are subsidizing consumption, it's a lie. To him, is to the seller of petrol, you are consuming. But to you, you need that thing as a catalyst that will enable you to get to the next stage, maybe to operate or to participate in a program like this. So we should remove that thinking that subsidizing petrol is consumption. We are subsidizing consumption. It's consumption. Even education is consumption. But when you consume the education, you become something. You are a pastor, Oga Itwa. When you preach, people are consuming your message. But at that point, they are just not consumers. Your message helps in transforming them. It catalyzes them to get to the next stage. So enough of this saying when you are subsidizing petrol, that person is yes, to you he is consuming, but to him he needs it to get to the next stage. Thank you. I don't want to take much time, but if you allow me, I'm ready to talk for 10 hours because of this thing, because I'm a bitter Nigerian. I go out and give lectures on fiscalization and economic management. But when you sit down, Nigeria is at a crossroad. In fact, Nigerian economy has reached the tip of the valley. It's about to collapse into the valley. And I stand to be proved wrong. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. That was very passionate, Comrade Zwaka. Sorry that Nigeria has put you in this area, but by God's grace, it will be well in Jesus' name. And God will choose for us the right kind of person to lead us. I think Fumi Ajayi Tomori had her hands up. I don't know if she wants to unmute herself and speak to us for a few minutes. Thank you. Is she able to unmute herself?
Okay, just close it. That's what.
The challenges with Fumi may be on her end. Let's see. I don't know if it's.
She has to raise her hand again so we can see her and unmute her. If she doesn't raise her hand, you can't unmute her.
Yeah, I was actually even looking for her to unmute her. But I shared in the chat a PowerPoint presentation that Mr. Rewane had done, and on the, I think he titled it, I don't know if you guys can see my screen, The New Global Disorder, and it does have a lot of information about the extraordinary times in the world and the financial challenges in Nigeria. So if you get a chance, please look at that PowerPoint. And
what did he say then? Can you remember what this?
It's in the PowerPoint. I shared the PowerPoint. He just really went through the first question, as you can see on my screen, is the Naira is to be redesigned and reissued. He talked about the rationale behind it. He talked about exchange rates, and he talked about some of the challenges in terms of what needs to be done to achieve the following objectives, why they redesigned it. Then he went on to talk about understanding the dynamics of currency redesign. He talked about this concept, salaries, wages. And I don't know that I can take us through that, but I think it's a very robust presentation that in our spare time, we can look at it and better understand. Pastor, I also want to ask, I believe there was an economic summit in Edo State last week. So, I mean, what are some of the states doing in preparing for advancing their economy?
Okay, this was at the program in Edo State. You're on the platform then?
No, I wasn't. I heard about it.
Oh, I see. Yeah. That's where it was on Thursday last week. Okay. All right. But do we have any further thoughts on this issue of our debt, and how do we get out of debt as a nation? Is there anybody that can comment on that? What do you think we should do as a nation to get out of debt? Look at our budget for this year. Okay, we're planning to generate 10.7 trillion naira. 10.7 trillion naira is what we're planning to generate. And we're planning to spend 17.13 trillion naira, 17.13 trillion naira, meaning that we have a fiscal deficit of 6.39. That's for 2022. In 2023, it's even worse, okay? In 2023, we're planning to generate 9.7 trillion naira, and then we're planning to spend 20.5 trillion naira, meaning that we have a deficit of 10.7 trillion, 10.7 trillion naira, okay? Capital expenditure out of that is 3 trillion. Debt service is 6.1 trillion, 6.1 trillion. So we're just generating income to service debt. Then recurrent expenditure is 8.27 trillion. So consumption is taking almost 15 trillion out of a 20.5 trillion budget. So there's only about 5 trillion to go into capital development, infrastructure, roads, and so on and so forth. I don't know what the international ratios should be, but I'm not sure that 5 point something or roughly 25% of a budget is sufficient to grow an economy, you know, especially an economy that's so dependent on consumption, dependent on SMEs, and dependent on importation. You know, a lot of the things that we are consuming, we are also importing, which means that there's also the issue of capital flight right there outside of Nigeria. Okay, a lot of the resources of Nigeria have been used to fund and finance other economies like China, like the US, like UK, and some parts of Europe, and of course Japan, where most of our cars come from. Okay, although the Chinese now are competing with them fiercely, and places like China, where other equipments and things come from. Then even India, where most of our medication seems to be coming from in this day and age. So we really are between a rock and a hard place in Nigeria. And does anybody think short, medium, and long term what we can do to readdress our economic challenges? Any comments at all? Jumoke, do you have any thoughts on that?
Charles, Yuri is back. I think he had some comments and he got cut off. So do we want to yield to him to finish his comments? I'm going to unmute him.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay.
So sorry about that. We lost you in there. Pastor Etua, these things that look like rocket science are really not rocket science if you're ready to address the issues properly.
Okay.
Like I told you, we have somebody who even in a very civilized economy has done a budget transformation. And I've told you about him before, King's College Oldway. Gatwick Airport wasn't making money. Bayogulesi took over and sold 40% of 7.1 billion. Like I was telling you before, you cannot run what's happening is called a middle income trap, which you're trying to generate all the resources, raw materials and everything. But the more you pour those raw materials into the global economy, the prices get depressed. And if the prices are depressed, it means that you're not able to fund your management services. One thing you must do to get out of a middle income economy is to get the treasury to begin to use the Naira as impetus for growth, which I was trying to explain to you before. In those days, every state or every region published a gazette saying the price at which your cocoa will be bought at different locations, which your rubber will be bought at different locations. So if you're a farmer in any environment, you can calculate where you are going to be at the end of the season, what income you make. That means anybody in any village in Nigeria, like my grandfather did and he knew, could make his money from anywhere he was. Now, when we took the IMF fund, we're told to close down our commodity boards and remove those local buying agents, which meant effectively the countryside was excluded. So you need to bring that back into the system and introduce produce beyond simple cash crops, bring in food crops also. Now, until you have these basic transactions in place, you cannot even begin to talk about the commodity exchange. So take off the liquidity anchor, don't anchor your economy on the naira, on the dollar anymore, and then begin to integrate the rural countryside into the place. Because the agricultural production in the country is big enough, but more than 60% of it goes to waste. And if you reduce your food imports significantly, the balance will be in place. Now, like in England, there's a crisis. There was a crisis because the last prime minister and the chancellor of the exchequer got the basic equation of society wrong. In every society, in everywhere human beings are, you have to give the human beings the skills to convert the resources available or the buying into what's called prosperity. Now, if that prosperity is universal, it is called a civilization. Now, we've discounted that for a long time, since maybe 1966, because the awful lot of young men who ran the civil service as PAMSECs obviously did not know all of these long implications. And I believe your mom was one of those who fought against this for a long while and actually put a case in court about ensuring that the gazetting of commodity prices must be returned to play. No one goes into growing items to agriculture and expecting to capture an international price. The domestic internal arrangement must be in place. So like I said earlier on, you can't unravel what you don't understand. Now, what they did in England was that basic equation of human beings plus resources to create prosperity went wrong. Because if you have a right-sided capital market approach, you're making the assumption that only the most skilled people will be given the resources. Therefore, when that wealth is created, there are three ways of correcting it. One, taxes. The other one is the second one is called windfall.
I think you're frozen. Mr. Yuri, if you can still hear us. Okay. Can we take Kadiri Adaba, who was next, and then Temi Tokpe before we take Commander Zaka? So we have Kadri.
Yes, hi, good afternoon over here. Thank you for this opportunity. I actually posted my comment on the link already. I think just hearing how everybody is talking about how to flip Nigeria to the next level. From my end, I think Nigeria needs to understand the populational dividend. I'm sure there's a lot of economists here who might disagree with what I might said, but I'm not an economist. But I'm going to go straight for the data part of what is going on in the sense of personalized data ownership, right? And how did that come about? According to the U.S. Congress, they said in 1984 that credit report was more important than IMF and every other entity out there. But now you can see how that report has led to every given access. With credit report, America has access to everything. A simple infrastructure. Everybody in America understands if you mess up your credit report, credit score, you are doomed. And this infrastructure works in every aspect of the entire nation, at everything. We know that. All America is 4% of the population and they control about 50 trillion economic. By printing that 3 trillion to leverage against this process. And we're in Africa. We talk about every other infrastructure, but this simplest infrastructure become the tipping point. For me, I believe if Nigeria or Africa want to move forward, they should focus on the secret of what it means to have credit report, what that statement means for the Congress, and then put all the effort and develop that and then catch up. And you can see Rwanda doing it, and Rwanda is doing it by establishing social credit report. So Nigeria should focus on that, put all their effort on that, and let's forget about every other thing else, because credits have been proven to turn around poverty in less than 18 months to 12 years. We've seen because of that, I think that's what we should focus on. Focus on building an infrastructure that can help Africa or Nigeria specifically on achieving credit report system in the whole nation. However you want to do it, I think that's what we should do to kind of catch up to the next nation. Thank you.
Thank you. Guess we'll be enlisting you as part of the ALG's committee to work on that initiative. Okay. Pastor, do you want to take the hands that are up? Should we continue to take those hands that are up?
Okay. Please, let's go ahead and take the hands that are up.
Temitope, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. It's good to be here again. Always an intelligent discussion. I appreciate everything everyone has said. I think it's all very important. And I think one of the ways, since we have been asked the question about what can we do, I think one of the ways is to get the economists and technocrats in one place to think and brainstorm and come up with a plan. That is one. The second thing, at the risk of sounding simplistic, would be reducing consumption and increasing production. Part of increasing production would involve national support, mainly for the farmers, for the infrastructure, for the road networks, and would also involve kind of like the government putting their foot down about Nigerian-owned products. What I kind of hear happened in the time of our president's previous regime, in which people were encouraged to buy Nigerian-made products, and it boosted the economy at that time. So I guess there are some lessons we can learn from our history if we look hard enough about a time when Nigeria was said to be much better than it is right now. The issue about overconsumption, if we just broke it down, would include living simpler. It would involve less government spending. It would involve cutting off excesses. I'm told there are some countries in which their president lives a very simplistic life, but everybody is fine there. So if that is something that can start from the top down, that would be a good plan if we are really serious about this. The other thing that I would want to raise would be about focusing on the parts of the economy the parts of the national infrastructure that would yield us the most benefits. Things like education, things like health, things like, I don't want to say infrastructure because we do have things on ground, but maybe technology, things that will be drivers to enhance our productivity, to focus our energies there, to focus our resources there. Once we have those moving forward, they would be able to affect the other aspects of the society. Once we have people that are educated, that are thinking in a particular way, that is known to change the whole trajectory of how a nation would think. If we think about how Ghana is, it's partly down to how their citizens are on a general basis. And then the parts that we cannot do without, things like petrol, we would unfortunately have to continue to devote some large amount of resources to that because we can't do without it, but there are a lot that we can do without. The other thing might also be getting our data right, as someone has rightly mentioned, even regarding the credit thing. That is a very good point, but getting our data down, even including the numbers. We cannot continue to encourage people to have more and more children that they already know that they cannot cater for. That is not a very good plan, and it's not really helping us. But yes, those are my points. Thank you.
Thank you for those salient points. We have Tunde Akpelobun's hand up, And I'm sorry, Ms. Commander Zaki and Mr. Yuri, will get back to you once we take those that haven't had a chance to comment. So we'll come back to you shortly. So Mr. Tunde, please go ahead. If you can keep your comments.
Thank you,
succinct.
thank you, Sister Jumoke. I call you sister because I know you really manage this platform very well. You see, I have listened very carefully to all the arguments of those we call specialists here who have explained the data, the Nigerian economic data, banking data, all this data, or the balance sheet, represent one day. So if anybody wants to mislead anyone, they will make sure that they are able to pass relevant entries that they are going to publish, so that that publication is only relevant for that day. You don't know what they are doing the next day, the third day, the fourth day, until the next quarter, if they produce quarterly accounts. And I hate people when they compare the economy of Nigeria with England. There's no comparison. United Kingdom is a planned economy. Nigeria is not a planned economy, just to be fair. And in a planned economy, when they are making decisions, they consider the social, political, and economic implications. So what you saw happened in England about 5 weeks ago, when Liz Truss was voted in to become the prime minister. It wasn't her that they wanted. They just put her there so that if, as they planned it, things will go wrong, then they will bring the right person in, who is Rishi Sunak. There's nothing wrong with the economy of England. In fact, England is one of the G7, G20. Nigeria is not even in the list of G50. So because Nigeria is not a planned economy. So I hear one of the federal ministers one day trying to justify the reasons why they always borrow money. And Nigeria cannot make enough income to pay for the interest of any money that they are borrowing. He said, if you want to have children, you see, you need to borrow in the anticipation that when your wife delivers, you are able to cater for the child. Who here borrows money?
Thank you, sir. I don't mean to cut you. I really apologize for cutting you, but our guest is here, and I'm sure so that's why I disrupted you.
Thank you.
My apologies.
No,
so thank you for your comments. Appreciate that, and I'm sure if we have time, we will.
Allow him continue for a few minutes. Let me just get myself.
No, I'm fine. I'm fine. I've made all my points. I don't want to start wasting time.
No, because sorry.
I'm fine. Thank you. Sister Jumoke, carry on.
Okay, maybe we should take Abe Akintaju's comments while we give our guests a few minutes to settle down. Abe, please.
Pastor Itoasa, you are making me speak before a colossus. Who am I?
Yeah, John the Baptist.
Okay, thank you. And good evening, everybody. Well, Nigeria has, we found ourselves in a rut. But the good news, if I can say it that way, is that it's an own goal. And in this case, it's an own goal that can be fairly, and I say that very well sensitively, fairly easily reversed, because the fundamentals of the Nigerian economy are still very strong. And with a serious economic management team in place, we can reverse our position within a 5 to 10 year period. I'll quickly unpack so that Mr. Bismarck can do what he knows how to do better than any other person. So we have a total debt now of about, plus or minus.
Before you, can you give me your thought?
Sir?
Go ahead, yeah. Go ahead, yeah.
Okay. We have a total debt of about 80 or so billion dollars, that we need to grapple with. I think it's slightly over that now. $80 billion can be defrayed without much stress on our finances over a 10-year period if we are able to increase revenues. One, we need to increase revenues both in Naira and in foreign currency. So today we have a tax to GDP ratio of about 8%. South Africa is about 3 times that. So what that simply means is that if we can even just double our tax to GDP ratio over a 4-year period, we can go from, for instance, the 7 trillion we are earning from taxes now to about 14 or 15 trillion, okay? And for people to be happy to pay taxes, they need to trust government. For people to trust government, government needs to be more accountable and more responsible. So once we take care of the responsibility and accountability of government, then we can begin to look at how to deepen the tax collection to GDP ratio. That's on one hand. On the other hand, I was talking to some oil and gas executives the other day, and they made a startling revelation that instead of our 1.96 million barrels a day OPEC quota, we are only able to produce about 600,000 barrels a day due to restiveness, due to oil theft, due to all kinds of inefficiencies in that system. Just imagine what can happen if we can meet our oil production quota of 2 million barrels a day. At $80 a barrel, that means we can generate an additional 40 billion naira, $40 billion per annum. $40 billion per annum, if we just let 5 billion out of that go to servicing and to paying down our debt, we can add that to other sources of forex revenue generation, and we can take down the debt over a 10-year period. Today, LNG is able to pay 7 billion to 10 billion in dividends. I am not privy to how much they are making in terms of revenues. I know for a fact that there are so many oil fields and oil blocks that the gases are just being capped, and when they are uncapable, they are being flared. Yes, the amount of investment required to capture and develop gas is significant. But if we are able to get funding and sacrifice and develop our gas infrastructure, we would be able to, within a 3 to 5 year period, make as much money in gas as we are making in crude oil. And I'll close quickly so I don't sit on this for too long. So imagine we are able to, one, meet our OPEC production quota. We are able to generate as much from gas as we are generating from crude oil. We are able to increase our tax to GDP collection ratio. We are able to also export other commodities that are in high demand and copiously available in Nigeria. And we are able to also add this to forex generating capacities. You will see that even though, yes, our debt is high, it can be repaid over a 10-year period. In closing, sir, what we just need to do is to actually review our economy. One, I don't think we are over-consuming. We are not even consuming enough. The average Nigerian is poor. Even if we want to consume, they don't even have what it takes to afford the consumption. So one, we need a consuming economy, but what kind of consumption are we looking at? We should be looking at consumption of the masses, not consumption by the ruling class, because consumption drives production if there is local productive capacity. And when we produce what we are consuming, it translates to jobs, it translates to buying power, it translates to economic prosperity, and it translates to GDP growth, ultimately. I won't like to go beyond that. I really want to, and I'm eager to listen to Mr. Rewane, as I always am. I'll stop there. Thank you very much, sirs and gentlemen and ladies. Thank you.
Okay, I think it's time for us to take our big fish today. Bismarck J. Rewane is the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Financial Derivatives Company Limited in Lagos. And for over 30 years, maybe nearer 40, he has been an economist, a banker, and a financial analyst. He's a chartered member of the Institute of Bankers of England and Wales and fellow of the Nigerian Institute of Bankers. I've known Mr. Rewane for a long time. In those days when we started hitting the town in Lagos, he was a big man at IMB, I think it was at that time, that was run largely by Nigerians, okay, and had a very brilliant King's College boy, who is now a king as the MD. Since that time, he's been into various areas of the Nigerian economy, and I dare say is one of the leading experts on economic management and very well sought after for his thoughts on the economy. I'd like to welcome him very warmly to this platform and ask him to give us his thoughts on Nigeria's debt profile. Bismarck, you are welcome. I want you to take us through Nigeria's debt profile. Number one, how did we get to where we are at this point in our nation? What does this debt profile mean for us as a nation? What did we do right? What did we do wrong? And then how can we get out of it, or what should we do? Because some people even say the more debt a country has, it shows that the country is doing some things right, and every country must borrow and this and that to grow the economy and that, and so on and so forth. They even correlate with Peter Obi, who saved in Anambra, according to him. It shows that he didn't know what to do with money. He should have spent that money to grow the Anambra economy, blah, blah, blah. So I would like to know your thoughts. And then finally, for you to rest home on this Naira, I don't know what it is, rebranding of the Naira or the change of the Naira or whatever it is.
Bleaching.
Bleaching of the Naira, recoloring of the Naira, and what that means for us economically, and why the CBN or the Nigerian Federal Government of Nigeria decided to do this currency change at this time, both the soft and hard issues and the issues of the story behind the story that you may know about. Thank you very much, Bismarck.
Thank you very much, Itwa. Again, it's a privilege and an honor to be speaking to this August gathering. The discussion today is about the debt profile of Nigeria and its implications for the new or incoming government. So let me try and simplify this. As far as I know, Nigeria's total debt, that is contractual and non-contractual debt, is something like $105 billion. Our GDP is about $430 billion. So to a large extent, our total debt, that's including international debt, is about 25% of our GDP, one. Two, is that this debt has been growing at an astronomical pace, because in 2015, the external debt alone was about $10 billion, and now that external debt is about $40 billion. So about 35% of our total debt is, but not included in this debt are some items of debt, right? Which is the federal government borrowing from the central bank, the ways and means advances, which are short-term debts, but they have come to a significant amount. But the way I want you to see it is my late father, God bless him, died November 6, many years ago, which is this month. He asked me, and he was a seasoned lawyer, and he asked me one day that, look, you student of economics, can you please tell me, every day I help this debt, what exactly is it? I explained to him that the national debt is national debt. Okay. Now, can I, as a simple lawyer, can I ask the government to divide the debt by the number of people in the country so I can pay that of myself, my children, and others, so that we are debt-free, and I can go everywhere and they'll give me a certificate that I've paid my debt? And my father said that, and I laughed, and I said, look, unfortunately, sir, before you came to this world, there was a debt for your country. When you leave this world, there will be a debt. So you cannot pay, you are looking at debt as static. By the time you finish paying your debt, it means that when you drive on the road tomorrow, or when you fly in the airport and all that, some new debt will come. Are you going to excuse yourself from all the benefits of the assets that this debt will buy? So you laughed and said, but I just don't like it because in my own legal, your liabilities are growing, but the assets are not growing. And he said that without checking anything. He's not an economist. He was just a pure lawyer and a surveyor before he became a lawyer. So, and I think about it every day. And today, let me tell you what it is. $105 billion multiplied by 800, divided by 200 million, gives you about $530,000. $530,000, right, per head, costs about 42 million naira per head. So every Nigerian walking around, technically speaking, is owing 42 million naira now, and it's counting. So I want you to think about it that way. 42 million naira is all. So the ones that are in the womb, the ones that are walking around, the ones that are in prison, the ones that are in the army, everybody has debt. And then the question is, what assets do you have? There's nothing wrong with liabilities, but what assets? What did we use it to buy? So let's step back. Countries grow. Countries' economy depends on how fast they can grow and how this growth can be divided in such a way that everybody's welfare, everybody, tomorrow is better than today, and next week will be better than this week, and next year will be better than this year, right? That's what we call the welfare of people. Once an economy gets to a point where your father's standard of living was better than yours, and your standard of living is better than your children, then that economy is finished. Because the whole idea of economic development is that the generation coming ahead should enjoy a better standard of living than the generation that is there. When we were young, we had black and white television. So my economics professor used to say that by the time you are finished in school, by the time you work the field, you will have access to color television. Those times our fathers had motorcycles, bicycles, some of them had cars. So by the time you finish, when this development plan is implemented, even your neighbors in the whole of your street, just 1 minute, sir, 1 minute.
Let's just give Bismarck a few minutes to answer that phone call. I'm sure it must be a very important phone call. And then he'll be
It's a phone call, not from Joe Biden.
I'm sure it's Mohammed.
No, it's a phone call, not from Joe Biden, from somebody else, from Vladimir Putin. Right. Vladimir Putin. Yeah. So what I was trying to contextualize here is that we have a debt. So if you use debt to procure assets, and those assets lead to increased productivity, and that productivity leads to increased GDP, then the welfare, the people of this generation will live a better standard of living than those before them. And the ones coming after us will definitely enjoy a rapid standard of living. But what has happened, if you ask yourself in Nigeria, in the last 30, 40 years, every generation that came had a poorer and slower standard of living, a worse standard of living than the previous generation, which means that we have our economic values upside down. So at the end of the day, economics is not about debt, it's not about inflation, it's about whether your people are living a better life than the generation before them, and whether the generation coming is going to live a better life. You cannot be happy that you can drive 2 cars and your children cannot drive a car. Now you can do this, so that is what has happened, right? There was a time in this country when one head of state, and I will not mention it, bought a car for each officer of the police army free from sergeant and above, 504, Jetta, and one other for everybody, and gave it to them. Whether it was a useful use of money, I don't know, but the point is that the country could afford it, and yet the debt at that time was nothing near the debt that we're talking about now. So I just want to put that context there. What is debt is a tool, right, for budget management, for investment, and all of that to make sure that the quality of life of people and the economic growth of the country is accelerated and sustainable. Having said that, there's what we call debt sustainability. There's no company in the world, except a few, very few, and those are the inefficient ones that don't have debt. So you have your overdraft, but yet you are reporting profits. So debt is not necessarily a bad thing. As a matter of fact, in economics, we have a theory. We have a theory called a paradox of thrift, where you know that by saving too much, you're actually destroying value. You know, those of you in biblical leaning, you have Silas manna, right? So if you save too much and you almost die of starvation, while in fact you are saving in the midst of plenty. So I don't want us to first of all, almost assume that debt is bad, all debt is bad, but debt, well, which judiciously used, where the proceeds are used to increase productivity and skills, only make a society a better place, make the nation a better place, and make a company a stronger company. Okay, so having said that, and I started off by saying that debt, total debt is $105 billion, of which over 30%, 35% of it is external debt, and that our debt to GDP ratio is something like almost 25 to 30%. Okay, so that's what it is. Now, but what has happened recently is that, yes, the debt to GDP, first of all, you don't use GDP to pay debt. You don't use that to pay. GDP is not cash flow. GDP is just output, right? Yeah, you cannot use yams to pay your debt. And if it's international debt, every time the currency gets devalued, then you are owing more. So I want us to see that context. And I don't want any discussion on the economy to be a blame game that, oh, this administration or the previous administration or the administration before that, or the Nigerian governments have always been stealing, leakages, plundering, and all of that. No, it's about competence and driving. It's about competence actually and delivering value to your people. Don't forget that you, the people, are the ones that employ the leaders. You, the people, are the ones that fire the leaders. You, the people, or we, the people, let me say, we, the people, are the ones that fire the leaders, that employ them, that demand good governance and penalize them for bad governance, or at times bad governance and bad luck, or good governance and bad luck also leads to the same outcome. So I want to get that very clearly stated. Now, so that we don't waste too much time, this debt that you're talking about, it arises from three principal areas. One is the budget. The government has an estimate of expenditure, estimate of revenue for the year, which is called the budget. So, and then at the end of it, if the expenditure is more than the revenue, you have a deficit. This deficit is funded by debt or ways and means advances from the central bank or from investors. So you have the debt and you have revenues, and you have revenue anticipation bonds. You have the people. So let's get that very clear. The amount of debt you use to fund the deficit, together with the way you fund it, and the interest rate you pay on those debts, actually determine the level of macroeconomic stability in an economy. If you overborrow, or if you borrow like what we are borrowing now, and artificially set interest rates at a low point, then you create some form of instability. And how does this debt arise? First and foremost, I want you to understand one thing clearly. One, that the government revenue, over 60% of Nigeria's government revenue comes from oil. Over 90% of its foreign exchange earnings come from oil. Those oil payments are in dollars. Those dollars are exchanged for naira by the central bank and given to the federal and state governments. Today, the rate that is being used is the I&E window rate minus 2%, so about 440 naira per dollar. But the federal government and the state government buys diesel today to fire their generators at 810 naira per liter, which is use an equivalent exchange rate of about 800 naira to a dollar. So whilst they are getting 440 naira for their dollars, they are paying essentially for everything that is imported 810 naira. So ab initio, they have a 50% haircut immediately. That haircut has to be paid for by raising additional debt. So what do you see? You go to the Eurobond market, you go to other places to raise money to pay for import content, for rail projects from China, for airport projects, for power stations, for cars, for petrol, and all of these things. And when the revenue you are raising is not enough, you borrow. And when you borrow, what happens is that he who goes a borrowing goes sorrowing. Well, one thing you must know, state governments do not, or federal governments generally do not repay debt. What you do, you refinance debt. And there's what we call fiscal sustainability ratios and debt sustainability ratios. The debt sustainability ratios will tell you whether you're in a position to raise additional money or pay back the existing debt. And then you will have ratings, Fitch, Standard & Poor's, Moody's, who will rate your debt instruments. And the rating is used to determine the possibility of a default. So I want you to get, there's domestic debt, there's international debt. I'm focusing more so on the international debt because if you default on your international debt, then you are likely to find yourself in jeopardy. Okay, so let's get that clear now. But before you started borrowing, you were raising revenues. Let me start off. When General Olusegun Obasanjo became head of state in 1999, after his term in prison and all of that, when he started, Atiku Abubakar was then the vice president. When he started the business of running the state, every month they would bring the revenue, because he had the economic management team meetings every Wednesday before he went into council. And he says, okay, how much have we made this week? He had cash flow. He had cash flow. And all. How much have we made this week? How much have we made this month? Say, okay, 100 billion naira. Okay, so how are we going to spend it? Say, no, sir, we made 100 billion naira this month, but we have to pay debt, interest, 40 billion, this, that. So after 2 or 3 months, a person will say, every month you will say debt service. How did this debt come? I say, we don't know, but this is what it is. Okay, how do we get out of it? They say, good question. You cannot get out of it except you renegotiate it. What are the terms? So Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala and the others went out. They came back and said, Oga, we can extend the debt maturities. 1, 2, we can plead and beg for debt forgiveness. They say, how does that work? They had what they call the highly indebted poor country initiative. Okay, what does that mean? It means that you pay off this amount, then you write off this. Our total external debt at that time was about $36 billion. So I think, if I remember right, we are asked to pay about $15 billion or $12 billion, and they wrote off about 18. So in the end, we ended up with only about $3 or $4 billion of debt from about 30-something billion dollars. That was a clean slate. So Obasanjo said, never, never again. 2, he then went on to proclaim or promulgate the Pension Act of 2004. He did all the things that you know about. And then the result was that Nigeria, over the next 6, 7, 8 years, generated external reserves of about 40-something, 50-something billion dollars, had excess crude account that went as high as $66 billion, right? And then also, they went on to streamline a lot of things. That was what happened. Now, from that time on, so the liabilities were reduced, the assets were increased, but mainly cash. From that time on, we've gone to a point now where the debt, external debt has gone from $3 billion. So when Jonathan was there, it got to $10 billion, $15 billion, right? And then now we are at about $43 billion. So that's the debt. So that's where we are. Domestically, we also have a huge debt burden, but it's not compared to the GDP. It's not alarm bells are not going off yet. But the trend is worrying. Okay. Now the trend is worrying because we have not seen a corresponding increase in productivity and technology. We have not seen that. We are seeing, in fact, negative productivity, declining productivity. That's what we are seeing, right? And so let me stop here and look at what is going to happen to the next government. The government elections are in about 95 days from now. Handover is on May 29. The new government will be confronted with 1, external debt, 2, dwindling reserves, 3, a currency that is struggling, 4, a budget deficit. The budget is about 20 trillion, of which the deficit is about almost 11 trillion. Now, that's federal. The government is going to be confronted with, like you all know, 133 million people in multidimensional poverty, right? The government is going to be confronted with security issues. The government is going to be confronted with oil revenues that have gone to nothing because of oil theft and vandalism. The government is going to be confronted by banditry and insecurity in the middle. 3 groups, actually. 1, the oil vandals. 2, the bandits. And 3, the regulatory and financial terrorists who are using government, tools of government to terrorize the public with taxes, all sorts of rules and regulations and all sorts of things. So you have your regulatory and financial terrorists, you have your bandits, and you have your oil terrorists and warlords. Those are the 3 groups that whichever government is going to come in. And if you don't deal with those things, the only thing you are going to do is either use oil revenue to service them or use debt to service them, or both. That is what you're going to be dealing with. You have some debt maturities that are coming up in July, another set in October, November, another set. And those payments have to be made. If you make those payments, it will further weaken your currency and put you in difficulty. So you need to go and reschedule. You need to go for rescheduling discussions. How does this work? It works this way. The rule of the thumb is that the route for debt rescheduling, the first trip is from Lagos or wherever you are to Washington. From Washington, you go to Paris. From Paris, you end up in London. Why do we say that? You go first to the International Monetary Fund in Washington. That's the first port of call. After you've discussed with the IMF and come up with a program and it's endorsed, you fly to the Paris Club of Donors to go and see where, that's where you meet all the donor nations, the French, the Germans, the Japanese, the English, and all. After you've rescheduled your donor debt, you then go to the London Club of Bankers, where the short-term debt owed by the banks, trade debt, and the hedge funds will then be rescheduled. At that point, you are clear. So whoever comes in, no matter, or if you have a government of national, whatever it is, whoever comes in is going to have to deal with first thing that the government is going to do is that this budget or 20 trillion is for 1 year, but it's only going to be managed by this government for half a year. By May 29, President Buhari and his team leave. The new president will come in and have and National Assembly appoint their committees. So by June, they would have sent some names to the committees, and by July, August, would have cleared. Then all that time, there were congratulation messages and first ladies taking photographs and all of that. That's what you're going to see. But then after that, the new Minister of Finance would tell the president that this is what I've inherited, this is what I've got, and this is the position. Now let's have a supplementary budget. The president will say, based on what? Based on an oil assumption of production, price, and exchange rate of this, inflation of that. He will call in the central bank and say, oh, yes, what are we? Okay, let's have a supplementary budget. Supplementary budget will be passed, approved, and that supplementary budget will be a reality check to say, come, the things are not as, the things are pretty tough. At that point, you'll be going to the World Bank meetings in end of September, early October. To go to the World Bank meetings, you would have had to meet with the IMF first in Lagos, and they would have discussed with you, in Abuja, they would have discussed with you, and then you go there and you put your program. My hunch is that you go for what they call a PSI, Policy Support and Instrument Program. To do that, you'll have to address your subsidies, your size of your public service. The subsidies are not just in petrol, subsidies in the exchange rate, subsidies in power tariffs and everything. So the entire system will be, so you will have that, and then investors will bring in money and all of that. So okay, the structure of your foreign exchange market and exchange rates will have to be changed. The structure, mind you, I'm not saying the exchange rate, the structure of that market will have to be changed to be more investor friendly and more realistic. And then we will take, at that point, Nigerian government, president will come back and present, after a supplementary budget, will present a budget for the year 2024. All right, so that's what I see. At that time, when you now go to the Paris Club and London Club, you say, look, gentlemen, we have the following obligations. Can you help refinance it? One, okay, refinance it for 5, 8, 10 years, and the rates at which you're going to be raising that debt is going to be far higher than what you have paid today. Fitch, Standard & Poor's, and Moody's are going to come and rate you again. You will appoint advisors who will take you on the road show, and you'll have to raise additional money and refinance the existing money. You probably end up with a program from the IMF, and I don't know what kind of program it is that we'll go for, depending on who the Minister of Finance, depending on who the President is. But I am almost certain that there will be a need to have that conversation with the IMF. We cannot avoid it. That's my own judgment. You can avoid it if you want to, but then you have to have alternative sources of income, alternative sources of debt to refinance the debt. So domestically, almost all your debt has to be consolidated and refinanced with a program. The Minister of Finance already said that we need to securitize our debt. When you do that, all that debt will now send to the market, and the interest rates on those debt instruments will increase. When interest rates increase, your stock market values and your real estate values will drop. Then international money will flow in, right? Your exchange rate will move, will be adjusted, definitely. But the beauty of it is that the adjustment, official rate will depreciate, but the parallel market will appreciate, and you get some kind of equilibrium there. All of this is based on the assumption that there's what do you call it? There's local peace and stability, and there are no surprises. So having said that, I think the projections I see, from international economists and experts, everything points to one. First of all, before I go to the projections, the GDP numbers came out this afternoon, and I think I hear it is 2.25. Central Bank spoke of the annual GDP at 3% and all the other projections. But if 2.25 is what we got in Q3, when you average it out, it means that this year we'll be lucky to get a growth rate of about 2.8 or 2.9. So if you get that, next year's growth is going to be much better, because all the headwinds of this year have just kicked in. So generally speaking, the debt is there. It has to be rescheduled, refinanced. We need additional money. to fund our programs. We need to refinance domestic debt, which will push up interest rates. And we also need to focus monetary policy on liquidity management. We need to reduce the subsidy level, maybe eliminate it, and also allow the exchange rate move towards a market-driven exchange rate. All of these things come together. It's not one, it's not either or. You have to do it. And you may not have to do everything at one fell swoop, but you need to have a program which will allow the new president the leeway to at least do a little bit of work. But there will be a lot of resistance and a lot of problems. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much, Bismarck. That is platinum, if you ask me. That simply is platinum. So why are you not our finance minister to drive this?
I'm not looking for a job. I'm quite content being staying on the political balcony to see how things go.
I know you've made too much money.
No, right now what you want is peace of mind, not money. With all the money in the world, you will have no peace in this country.
Somebody was telling me that recently. I wanted him to invest in something. He said, "Look, my friend, I have enough to just manage myself. I should leave him alone." Interesting. I don't know. I'm going to leave the floor open so that I don't hog the mic. And the day is fast spent. And honestly, Bismarck, you'll have to come back, I think, to take us a little bit more on this economy and so on and so forth. But I'm going to throw the floor open, and I'll ask Jumoke to please conduct the Q&A or Sonny, so that we can take in a few questions, and then we might need to close as soon as possible so that we're not here for too long. So any questions, you should please raise up your hand. Oh, there are plenty questions and comments. Okay, I think Shade is looking angry. I don't know why. She's hoping she was in Nigeria running our economy. Oh yeah, angry with the way we run our economy. Don't worry, we'll get better. We'll get better. Bambo is not asking any questions. He's looking petrified. That how is this thing going to shape out? Okay, you're not looking petrified. You're just looking like Queen Elizabeth. Maybe we'll take a question from Lukman Dada, and then Douglas, and then we'll come back to Charles. Lukman Dada, Douglas, Charles, and Ademola. Please unmute yourself and ask your question. I think if I'm with it too, we'll take those 5 questions very quickly, and then we'll see where we go from there so that we don't spend too long. So Lukman, Dada, Douglas, Charles, Ademola, and Niifamwide. Thank you very much.
Lukman, kindly unmute your mic, please.
Okay. It's on mute right now, right?
Yes, you're muted.
Okay. As I said before, I thank Mr. Bismarck, because we get his monthly report every month, and thank you for creating the time to generate the report, Now, having said all these good things you said, there are 2 questions that I will quickly, ask you. The influence of the foreign government on our government, that's one thing. Our cultural differences between the North and the South in implementing all this budget. You talk about Obasanjo, what he did with Okonjo-Iweala, and these people came now. They don't believe that if you steal government money, you are not stealing. The money doesn't belong to anybody, this and that. So how can we instill discipline, that will have productivity to really reduce borrowing? Because if we have productivity, we'll be able to manage those things, That's what I hope you can address that area, please.
Well, I think that you talked about productivity and leadership. The question today is about debt. We are where we are, and I'm not sure that trying to interrogate how we got where we are is important. It is the way out and what to do next. That is a key element. So I believe that, one, the discipline that we brought on us by our creditors, because the creditors are not going to take prisoners, they're going to insist on certain things. So you're not going to have the luxury to do the things that happened in the past. This time the world is more aware, the world is more discerning, and this time the rest of the world also have their own problems. So quite frankly, I don't think we have the luxury. So again, in my own last deposition at the Lagos Business School, I made it clear that for once, or not this time, the Nigerian economic problems can only be solved politically. You can bring all the economists you want in the world, and they cannot solve anything. The political decisions have to be made. The subsidy issue is a political situation. If you don't have the political powers and determination to do it, you will never do it. You'll just be a coward. So you have to deal with it. First of all, you have to understand it. And then secondly, you have to deal with it because of the will to go ahead and do it. So will there be corruption? Well, there will be corruption, but if corruption is a fringe activity, if out of 100 yams in the room, 2 are stolen, so be it. 98 will be available. But if the kind of corruption you're seeing is out of 100 yams in the store, 60 are stolen and only 40 is left for the owners and all of that. And then after a while, it becomes 70 are stolen and 30 are left. And before you know it, it becomes 80 stolen and 20 left. That's where we are. So you have to have, that's why I say you have to have, whoever is the president, will have the political courage to go after the three tumors in our system, in our body. One, the warlords and the vandals in the provision of oil assets. 2, the insecurity, kidnap, ransom, and terrorists and bandits and herdsmen. And 3, the financial and regulatory terrorists who are using government resources to exploit the people and destroy the people, all in the name of regulating and policing them. That's what I say. So if you have the courage to face these 3 groups, then your path is clear. The rest is just tidying up the facts.
We'll take the next one, which is Douglas's iPhone. I don't know if you want to take a group of questions together.
I'll take one group because time is fast spent.
Okay, so we'll take
questions.
Okay, we'll take Douglas iPhone, Mr. Ademola Niyi, and then Charles Iyure, Mr. Iyure. We'll take all those 4, and then you also have some questions in the chat. So go ahead, Mr. Douglas. I've asked you to unmute. Please unmute yourself and ask your question. Can you please keep it to like a minute or less? Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. This is a laudable program which can easily benefit all of us. The speaker has really addressed the issue that I would have loved to answer, ask the question on, which is financial discipline and accountability. And without the political will, this cannot be achieved. And that's just my own concern, because all of us will say the level of poverty that is ravaging in our country, and it's at alarming rate. And the rate that the young ones are leaving the countries to the unknown world. I just think that in the coming government, we have the political way to do it. I don't have much question. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ademola, can you please go ahead with your question? And less than a minute, please. And then the next one would be Mr. Niyi Famuyide. Thank you. I think
Thank
we
you.
lost Miss. Okay, go ahead. Thank you, sir.
You talk about the federal regulatory agencies that I would describe as being rent seekers. Could you expatiate in terms of the damage that they are doing? Secondly, with regards to the oil subsidy, we know that it's totally unsustainable. What are your measures that you feel that the government coming into power needs to do to address that situation? That's pretty much questions I have.
Thank you. Mr. Niyi Famuide and Mr. Charles Iyore. Mr.
Good evening.
Niyi, thank you. Go ahead.
Good evening. Yeah. I'd like to just address a sector of the economy while we try to revamp on the debt servicing. And this happens to deal with the Niger Delta area. We've set up a lot of monitoring and development activities in the past, the UNPADEC, the Niger Delta Development Corporation, the 13% derivative and other things. But yet the area is not developing at all. A lot of money is being pumped to revamp the economy and to make the so-called pipeline busters go back and to develop the economy as it were. But as we speak, we can see little for the amount that is being pumped into that economy. And also, what does the government is doing? What was government doing to combat the area that we talk about the involvement of the traditional schools in development in Nigeria? Because I see that a lot of money is being given to these tools to make sure that they develop their area as well as the governors. The governors are not paying their own fair share in the development of their state, neither do the local government. Thank you.
Thank you. So do one more? Do you want to take one more?
One more.
Okay. Mr. Iyore, please go ahead. And then you have a couple of questions in the chat. Maybe after this, you can take the questions in the chat. Mr. Iyore, please go ahead with your question. Thank you.
The key point you've made, Bismarck, is the fact that the political class does not understand how the system works. And in 1 week of the political class not understanding how the system works in England, the interest rates went through the roof for running the government, and the cost living standards are going to be the way they are for another 4 quarters. Now, we haven't got it right for a long time. What they got wrong in our system in England was the fact that after a careful budget allocation, they did not use the tax rate to correct the system, neither did they use the windfall tax to adjust the take care of the NHS and the rest of them. And finally, they expected everything to come down through trickle down. Now, we have been running our economy for a long time on trickle down. Without a clear agenda for windfall tax and a clearly defined tax rate. Just like you have said, what makes you think that the political class will understand that production equation to ensure that we can get out of where we are, which we have been in since 1988? Thank you.
Thank you very much. So let me take, first question was regulatory agencies in Nigeria and dimensioning the damage which they have done. Well, I'm not sure that the damage is there for everybody to see. But what is more important, the potential damage and the structural damage. You see, you damage the structure of a property, and the time you know what it is, the decay curve is setting, and what happened in Gerrard Road, you do damage, and then all of a sudden the whole thing collapses. So it's quite clear. But what I want to point out here is that there's what we call in economics, and I don't want to bore you, but just let me mention it. There's what we call general disequilibrium, which means that almost everything is out of equilibrium, in every segment of the economy. Okay, so the prices of petroleum products are out of equilibrium. The price of foreign exchange is out of equilibrium. The price of money market instruments are out of equilibrium. The price of debt instruments are out of equilibrium and everything. So what it does do is that it keeps you in a perpetual state of disequilibrium. So I want you to imagine yourself in an aircraft which is just shaking and vibrating all the way from Lagos all the way. By the time you get to London, you're already totally famished because the thing was vibrating all the way through. And then compared to one day when there was no bad weather, you flew very smooth and had an easy flight, you slept all the way through, and when you arrived there, you felt good. The one that was shaking all along is the one that I would describe as general disequilibrium, and the one that was smooth was when the economy was in general dynamic equilibrium. So having said that, you see, this disequilibrium, you are assuming that everybody suffers. The point is that this disequilibrium and all these distortions that are created in economic principles benefits a few people because they are enjoying it. If, for example, you are in charge of allocating foreign exchange at 450, 440, and the market is at 800, every time the further apart these rates are, the more the money you make. So there are those who are benefiting from this, the beneficiaries of injustice. And you cannot and those are the groups that I'm saying, just as the oil vandals are benefiting because they're taking money out and bringing it in to sell at 800. They're still breaking the pipelines. The herdsmen are making money for kidnapping people and bringing the money in. And the regulatory and financial terrorists are doing the same, from collecting this, seeing the spread between official and non-unofficial market prices. So we know where the problem is. We know that there's enlightened self-interest. We know there are rent-seeking, chronic capitalist systems, just like Russia, right? So we know until you annihilate those who are in charge of all of these things, the beneficiaries of these things, because they're not alone. It's not just the people who are in office. The people in office are one, but the people outside office who are benefiting from it are also part of it. So you have, turkeys don't vote for Christmas. You have to just go and change the system. I'm not saying go after them, but change the system and bring it back to normal. If you don't do that, and you need a political will, if not, the moment you get in there, it's your wife and your sisters and your girlfriends and your cronies that will come to, and they will immediately become the new, rent terrorists. So it's easy to say it when you're not there, but I've got to help you when you get there. Your own people will be the first to tell you that you must continue. So that is dimensioning. Petrol subsidies and how to deal with it. Petrol subsidies is very simple. You cannot claim that you are using 70 million liters of PMS in a day in this country. It's not possible. It's not possible because in the same time, on Sunday, the paper said that the number of imported cars in Nigeria dropped by 40% this year compared to last year. And if you go to the previous, so the number of cars coming to the country is growing by minus 30, minus 40%, while the amount of petrol being consumed in the country is growing by 30 or 40%. No way, it's not possible. It doesn't stand to reason. So what is happening? You have all sorts of warlords and gangs enjoying the thing, but that's not the only subsidy. Let us take fertilizer, for example. You have a fertilizer plant, brought 3 million tons of production in this year, and the price of fertilizer went from 5,000 naira a bag to 17,000 naira a bag, and now it's at 35,000 naira a bag. Why? Because the guys are buying the fertilizer, going across the border to sell it. Luckily for them, the thing in Ukraine and Russia reduced the amount of urea and ammonia in the world, and therefore the global price of fertilizer increased. And our people here took advantage of it and are selling it and making a fortune. So what has happened? At 30,000 naira a bag of fertilizer, you're getting nothing. So agricultural productivity is declining. The guys are selling the fertilizer across the border, bringing the dollars in and enjoying themselves. The guys who are buying across the border are using to make improvised explosive devices to blow up places. And so we are suffering both sides. One, our fertilizer is being smuggled out. It's being used by terrorists to blow up our things. So we have a problem. Now, somebody talked about the Niger Delta. No development whatsoever, I don't know what to do about it. Well, the truth is that it is because there was no development and no accountability, no transparency, no governance, that the warlords have taken over and are taking the oil and selling it and using it to finance all sorts of things. Some of them, most of them, even the political officers today are using the proceeds of stolen oil to fight elections. And that's what you are seeing. So it has come full cycle to come and hurt us, and we cannot sustain it anymore. Then go further. He said, Yore said that political class does not understand how the system works. They understand it. They understand it more than you and I do. They are very conversant with what they are doing. Because I'm saying that in enlightened self-interest, they know what they get from this broken system. So it wasn't, what happened in the UK is a combination of so many factors. First and foremost, I think the cumulative effect of Brexit. Secondly is the breakdown in transparency, and that the intellectual property that goes into the political system in the UK has deteriorated from the way back in the days of Harold Wilson, Edward Heath, and all that, to what you have today as a bunch of neophytes who are running the country. So, but we'll go through that process, and I think that it's not just that. There's a need for your type of leadership. When I say leadership, I'm not talking about political leadership. Even in the business community, what is the quality of leadership? What's the combined experience in the boardrooms in this country today compared to what it was 20 years ago, right? I want you to just look at the combined intellectual power in the boardrooms, in ministries, in the military, in the Supreme Court, in the banking system, in the petroleum companies. Look at them and look at what you have today compared. So it's not a mirror. It's not a puzzle that a country that has this kind of leadership and weak institutions and dysfunctional populace, where poverty has been weaponized, will come up with this kind of outcome. So, but we know it. What to do about it is what I'm saying. When the new government comes in, goes to the creditors, takes away to a large extent most of the subsidies and put the economy back in equilibrium. It is self-adjusting and self-correcting. You don't need, you'll be surprised that in a matter of 12 to 18 months, the economy is back in equilibrium, and you see stellar growth, spectacular growth, because you have done that. However, there's no guarantee that whoever comes in will do that, but I think that is going to happen because of the creditor pressure. I think that if it goes the other way, if you do nothing, you will limp to death. If you do something, you might succeed because you do the right thing. But if you go and do something which is the wrong thing, then that will be the end. That'll be a failed state. So let me just end my answers there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. There was a question about foreign exchange in the chat that I can't seem to find, but maybe while I'm trying to find that, I had posted an LBS presentation you did on November 2nd, and maybe I could just pull it up. Maybe if you can just summarize that for us in terms of what it means for us as citizens and how to prepare for. This is the slide. I don't know if you can see it. I'll just go to the heading. It's the new global disorder. That was the slide that we shared. It's a brilliant summation. If you could just maybe speak a little bit about that slide since we've posted it and summarize what we need to take away from it. Thank you, sir.
Okay, it's the new global disorder, extraordinary times and underwhelming leaders. So when there's disorder, you need the best minds. But if at that time you bring the worst leaders, then you have a problem. So again, the 3x3 matrix says that there's leadership, good leadership, there are strong institutions, and there are good policies. Strange enough, if you have bad leadership, and you have strong leadership, strong institutions, and good policies, the economic outcome is positive. If you have good leadership and good policies and weak institutions, the outcome is negative. So Obasanjo was a strong leader. He had good policies, but he had weak institutions. What happened was that the moment Dora Akuyele left office, happened the moment the central bank changed, the moment the judiciary changed, all you had with weak institutions, everything fails. So what we are looking for now is the best of all worlds: good leaders, strong institutions, and good policies. I dare say that this time around, we have weak institutions. They have, whoever is coming has to build and strengthen those institutions, has to have good policies. Then the rest is left for us. The emphasis on good leadership is not because whether you like, even if you have a good leader with weak institutions, you will have negative outcomes. So, and that was what we're trying to emphasize about global disorder. So, and that's even in an orderly environment. When it is a disorderly environment, then you have a problem. And don't forget the institutions for conflict resolution. When I say institutions, not government-owned institutions, the traditional rulers, the trade unions, the student unions, and all of that. When those things have been penetrated and dismantled, look at ASU, look at the doctors, when you go there, you need those strong institutions to be a checkmate to excess power and abuse. When you go and weaken those institutions, what happens is that you now have a situation where the National Assembly, the judiciary, the police force, and everybody have become victims of madness, right? And that is what is happening. We must strengthen the institutions and also hold leadership to account. When I say hold leadership in the private sector. If you have a company where the man is, sharing assets, bringing his wife to do all the contracts, do this and all of that, and putting his son-in-law in charge of this and all of that, then that is only a question of time that institution will fail. So you need the checks and balances. You need not only for him to be a good man of goodwill, but also to be able to be accountable and transparent. Because it is small, all the companies put together that makes up the country, so that the government itself will be under pressure to perform. We cannot have a situation where you can get away with anything, which is impunity. And that has become a part of our corporate culture as a country, and that has to stop.
So we all have a role to play in reforms and changing the system. It's not just the government alone.
You must hold everybody accountable everywhere. You must hold everybody accountable. Can't get away with it. Thank you.
So the two questions I have in the chat, sir, is first one is I need your forecast for foreign exchange equity market performance and PMI for next year. And the second question in the chat is, what do you think about credit systems? Okay. Credit reporting systems, yeah.
Okay, all of these are things to ensure that governance and accountability. But at the core of it is whether can you enforce law and order. Any system where there's no penalty and no incentives, if the incentives are to reward you for bad behavior and the penalties are you can get away with it, then you can have all the credit systems you want in the world. So let me go back. Projection of the exchange rate, to the extent that we have to go to the creditors and they compel us to have an open foreign exchange system, which allows us to allow the official rate to move towards what we call the REER, the real equilibrium exchange rate, or real effective exchange rate, and that's the way it is. Then you find that your rate begins to, you probably depreciate, adjust your currency downwards, and then the other one begins to appreciate. But that's not all, that's just a rate. What the system that happens is that every day within the central bank, and they would look at the value of the currency of our trading partners. We have 6 major trading partners: the European Union, the United States, India, China, Japan, and I think Canada or South America. So when we now know that, we would see how our currency has performed relative to those currencies every day and our tradables. Once we achieve, we know that, then we decide by how much we're going to allow our currency either depreciate or appreciate by intervening in it. And the facts must be clear. So once you have that done, right, and there's transparency on how the money comes and how it is used, then it becomes easy for you to allow. So when the price of oil increases and output increases, the currency appreciates. When it depreciates, everybody will know, and nobody will try to game the system. That's what it is. PMI is just the Purchasing Managers Index. That's indication of what people, whether investors are confident and are buying more, expanding more, and building. If they think that there's going to be more demand for their goods, they will produce more. If they think demand is going to be squeezed, they will produce less. So these are all symptoms of a structural economic situation in the country. What is more important is that if you have a system that works, I want you to imagine that you go to a school and there's no exam. Nobody will know anything. They won't go to class. But if there are exams and there's penalties and discipline and rewards for those who do well, scholarships and all those kind of things, that school will perform. But when you have a school that is a free for all, and all they do is to go and buy a question paper, then you have what it is. And that is what's happening in this country now. It's a free for all. We have to allow, things have to begin to pick up again. And I don't want to blame it on the government. It is a system that has deteriorated over time. And only that those who are supposed to even make sure that it works themselves participated. I want you to imagine in those days where you go, 3 or 4 of you are in a car and you want to go and call your brother who is in a party. Then the first person goes in to go and call him, and then the person gets there and joins the party. After about 30 minutes, you send the second person to go and call the person that you went to pick plus the brother that you sent in. And that person goes away. After a while, the person, all of you end up in the party. So that's what happens, right? And that's where Nigeria is. The people we are sending to go and call the people who are in the mad party have joined the party. And those who we have sent to go and call the people that have joined the mad party have also joined the party. And then Pastor Ito and others who are the last people have gone there and joined the party.
No.
I'm just kidding.
I'm going to join the party.
So the thing is, the only way to solve that problem is to go and put up the meter where they're having a party. And when there's no light, all of them will come out.
Pastor, do we have time for one more question? Because there's a question, Kadiri had his hand raised up for quite a while. So should we take that?
What is that question?
I think so.
Okay. And then I have a burning question too, that I'll add to Mr. Please go ahead and unmute yourself. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Kadiri.
Thank you very much. I just have one question regarding the public safety score, right? Like we're talking about trust issue. So the whole entire problem in Nigeria, in the whole entire world, is trust issue. So I want to go back on a certain aspect of technology, the infrastructural technology that you need to have a strong, public, a strong entity. We don't have that, right? You're talking about having, the ministries, having strong ministry, having strong groups that will run the system, but the system needs an infrastructure. People don't talk about the infrastructure. When we talk about infrastructure in Nigeria project, we are talking about roads. What about the technological infrastructure? For example, America was built under a legacy platform, and the legacy platform has been around for a very long time. With all of those banking, they are built under legacy platform. That's why it works for them. Nobody talk about the systems that is used to build those, groups, those strong entities, strong system that run the system, basically. So I'm sure you know what I mean by that. And now we're moving into a whole new generation of technology, right? When you cannot build your own legacy platform by using certain technology that Africans are already way ahead of. So for example, you talk about rewarding people. blockchain is used as a rewarding system, which is one aspect to generate reward to the minimum level. We no longer live in an economy of universal basic income. We live in a universal earned income. Even a farmer in the village of Azuhala in Ekberi can earn income by contributing to the system if the infrastructure was built right. So what do you think about that basic understanding of the infrastructure that need to put in place so that we can have the World Wide Web, not just the legacy platform, build our own system, infrastructural language is what I'm trying to use here in Nigeria system.
You talked about blockchain now. And we talked about blockchain. The first thing that came to my mind is crypto and what's happening. Well, you know, when Warren Buffett said that Bitcoin was rat poison, at first I had my doubt, but now I know. So, and luckily I didn't get myself involved in that. But the reality, and I would never have done that anyway. The reality is that the systems work, but if the people who know that because the systems will work, it will destroy the benefit they're getting, then that's why I want to make you understand that the guys who are gaming the system are smarter than the people that even build systems. They know the value at risk. They know exactly what will happen if the system works, right? So the thing is that if you have the courage to finish off this thing, you will finish it off, and this is not rocket science. Look, just go across, go to Benin Republic, go everywhere. Things are working there. How come? And this guy, you know, so I don't think we shouldn't kind of make these problems into, you know, super problems. There are problems, yes. After a while, they become structural and neck deep. But I think that it is because of the vested interest and the benefits that accrue to the few, the beneficiaries of this mad system. That's where we are. And what more? Because they make so much money, they control the political party structure that ensure that the only people that can get into office and be appointed are people from the same club. So it's only, but you see, what happens is that when it becomes unbearable, even the guys who are beneficial will have to turn around and fix the system. And that's where we are right now. There's no way out. The system has to be fixed. And I think it will be fixed. I'm confident it will be fixed.
Thank you, sir. My question is this. How does this translate to average everyday Nigerians, and how can we prepare for the tide, the financial tide that is coming?
Well, I don't think the tide that is coming cannot get worse than what it is. What I'm saying is that the average Nigerian is already battered, you know, it's already down. So the only thing that can happen is it will get better, because the guys who are gaming the system will have to give up something, because the entire town, the house will come down. And in that point, even those who are beneficiaries and those who are not beneficiaries, those who are victims will all suffer. So I'm absolutely confident. It has happened everywhere in the world. So the move from the transition from imperfect markets where rent is collected to perfect markets is a slow process in some cases, but it's also a revolutionary process in some places. But the change is imminent. It's inevitable. And those who make peaceful change impossible make violent change inevitable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. If I may come in here, just a very quick question. I truly loved your roadmap that you gave to us and how we can expect the new budget and the restructuring and the clubs and the lineup. However, all that is good, and all that is the theory of fixing and sorting out our debt. But you have established that our real crux and the problem is this triangle of insecurity. And until the new government and the new leaders focus on that triangle, there's actually no going forward. Would you be able to indicate to us, if all things are equal, if we elect the right leader, If somehow the right leader knows what to do, they have great advisors like yourselves on the cabinet. How much time can an average Nigerian expect for the assembly of each of these three security elephants that we have to cope with?
Well, listen, you're asking a question that, you see, it's not about time. It's not about knowledge. It's about the courage to confront the problem. It's just about courage. And quite frankly, you have to be fatalistic about this. If you are going to deal with a problem, desperate times call for desperate measures. You are going to have to. If I was contesting an election today, the first thing I would tell the Nigerian public that I will not, and I cannot do a second term. Because the moment you're going back to go and ask for votes, you are finished. If you go like a Mandela and say, look, I'm going doing one term, and I'm going to take very vicious and tough steps to solve this problem. Murtala Mohammed was in office for 6 months, and it made greater impact than those who were there for 10 years. So you need to be that focused and determined, and know that this is not a game for interns. This is a game. This is a job for those who are ready to take the bull by the horns. So we listen to the debates. I think we are making some progress, but I tell you something, the courage to move and do the things that are there is going to be a tall order, but you never know. Miracles happen,
Yes. Thank you. We'll hand over to Pastor to close us out. Thank you so much for your time. I'm sure Pastor has a lot of comments. And for those of you that are looking for the PowerPoint presentation, please send an email to algnlsvolunteer@gmail.com. I also posted that PowerPoint presentation. Please go ahead and download it and also send an email. I'm going to post the email again for you to send your requests to, and we'll go ahead and send that to you. Thank you. Over, Pastor.
Well, jolly good. I think we've had a thoroughly great time with Mr. Bismarck Rewane. We have enjoyed thoroughly, again, your understanding of the issues, the solutions that you have provided, and everything. I think on my own part, I'm going to go back and watch this again and learn from it so that I can absorb all those things. And if we have any extra questions, we will come back to you. I hope we can invite you again to speak again on the economy and maybe throw some light into what you think the politics of Nigeria is. But yes, I'd like to ask you my own question. Who is going to win elections in 2023? That's my parting shot. And then your closing remarks. And you must give us a specific name. Don't
Okay. If I knew that, I would be the richest man in Nigeria. And but I quite frankly, the race is wide open. And INEC says they're preparing for a runoff. And I heard yesterday when I listened to the details that the way the runoff runs, and I completely got this wrong before. It says that in a runoff, assuming that there are 10 candidates, the man with the highest number of votes that's number one. But the second person that will contest against him does not have to have the second amount of votes, or must have the highest amount of votes in most of the states. Therefore, you could be number 4, right? And because you had the highest you had majority in more states than the others, you will be the second person that will run off with the first person. So the multiplicity, the plurality of your votes across the country, rather than concentrated in one area, will determine who the second runner-up will be. And between the first runner-up and the second runner-up and the deals that we made that will lead to the outcome. So what I can say is that I think there will be a runoff. I think that most of the current structures will be broken down, but people will also go back to the primordial tribal conclaves. And so it's quite an interesting, this is the first time we've had a tripod election. in many years. So the last time we had it was when Balewa, Awolowo, and Azikwe were contesting. Ever since then, we've had it changed a little bit. In 1979, we had Waziri Ibrahim, Azikwe, Awolowo, and Shagari. So that was a quadrangle. This time we have the tripod again, the triangle, which is Peter Obi from the southeast, Tinubu from the southwest, and Atiku from the north. So how that will play out is a bit difficult, but again, they have the running mates and you have the rules of engagement. So right now, these are early days, and like Azikwe said, this is a long-awaited dance, and that some chickens will still break their legs before the real music begins. Thank you very much, Itwa.
So let me ask, what will make them say there should be a runoff? What should happen that there will be a runoff?
To be a runoff, no, the person who wins will not have 25% of the votes in 24 states.
Okay.
In other words, you may get all the votes in the southwest, get a lot of votes in the northwest, but the northwest and southwest alone cannot give you the 24 states. So if you go and do hopefully in the southeast and south, then you are doing badly. So you must get 25% of the total votes casting, almost 24, in fact 24 states, and that's a big one. Okay. So that's what it is. Who knows?
So you know that anybody will be able to get the 25% in the 24 states at the rate.
It is possible, but if you get 25% in 24 states and you do not, and somebody else gets, so it's going to be, it'll be very difficult to have that spread, especially if people vote with tribal sentiment. Vote with tribal sentiment or vote against their opponents who have tribal sentiment. So,
okay. Any parting comments for us?
No, just keep your eyes open. I said we have to be. The price of eternal liberty is the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. That's what they say. So that used to be the saying. So we'll keep our eyes, be vigilant. Get your PVC, and you want to sell your PVC. You can sell your PVC and still screw the candidate and vote for the one you want to vote. Okay. Okay. All right, sir. Thank you very much.
Very much. God bless you. Have a good weekend. My love to my people, and we will catch up by God's grace. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend. God bless you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. And I posted the presentation in the chat again. Please go ahead and download it.
Thank you very
for
much.
your patience.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good week. See you.